Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Have you ever witnessed a poltergeist phenomenon?
Here's a good short one, which happened around 5 years ago in high school. I'm laying down in my bed, it's late at night and everyone else is asleep. I'm starting to shit my pants because those are the conditions that 75% of the time results in phenomena manifesting. So I curl up where I am in the top bed of a bed bunk and try to not think about the fact that I'm the only one awake and it's the middle of the night. It didn't help that my family liked keeping every single goddamn door in the house open at night. They claimed it was to help airflow. It's funny how many arguments I had with them at the house over the doors, and how it was beyond retarded keeping them all open like that. The house would still get stuffy and warm like an oven. Anyway, all the doors are open as well, so not only were the conditions ripe for me to experience from spooky shit, but the doors would hinder anything. Which I noticed, spooky shit may go down, but as long as your door to the room you're in is shut, it won't try getting into your room. Honestly, I think it has to do with permissions. It's not going to enter without your approval first. That's why to this day I always sleep with my bedroom door shut, locked, and barred. Getting sort of back on track, I really wanted that door closed, really badly. Because in that house I had noticed that something liked to walk up the stairs at night, stop at everyone's doors, before vanishing, I assume. You could always hear it. That's how I knew how that happened. So I'd jump out of bed and stealthily shut the bedroom door. Thankfully, everyone was asleep, so no one was awake enough to go and open the door again. These door battles happened frequently. I climbed back into bed, slightly better knowing that nothing could get in now. Well, I was wrong. You see, even later that night, my worst fears were confirmed. I was laying in my bed starting to drift asleep, when suddenly I noticed something strange. The air felt freezing suddenly. Not like you got dropped in a freezer cold, but holy shit, since when was I in the Arctic? Cold. It was in the middle of the summer in a heat wave, and I was being blasted with Arctic temps. I started to get a little scared at that point, because cold spots are a hallmark of hauntings. But this was more than a cold spot. What happened next was even stranger. My ears started popping like crazy, almost as if the elevation I was at suddenly dropped hundreds of feet. However, I was still shivering in my bed, getting a little confused and scared. That's when the worst thing happened. I suddenly felt a presence. Fucking pure evil. Imagine taking a trip to hell and coming face to face with a demon. That's what I felt. All the hatred and vile emotions that people express daily, bottled up and suddenly released at me at once. And as soon as I felt this wave of pure energy and malice, this sense that something was about to get me and skin me alive, I felt the bed jiggle, and heard a very powerful hand grasp the lowest rung of the ladder leading to my bed. A second passed without anything happening, but the clang, I heard something grab the next rung, swing itself out. The whole bed was unstable, and I could feel every movement, and slowly pull itself up. Another clang, followed by another. Soon I could sense that this entity was literally a step away from stepping into my bed with me. At that point, all of my sanity was lost. What do? I wondered. Can't jump out of the bed. This thing would realize that and kill me. I felt that. Then again, stay in the bed, and I'm probably looking at getting attacked by a demon. If I didn't make a decision soon, my life could very well be game over. As anticlimactic as it sounds, a realization came to me, well, more of like a hint out of nowhere, that this thing was feeding on my fear. By shitting in my pants, being unable to move out of fear, it was feeding off of it. If I were to stop, it would go away and leave me alone. So I relaxed as best as I could, unclenched all of my muscles which were primed and ready to blast me off and away from that area for survival, and control my breathing. Breath slowly in and out, in the same pattern that I do when sleeping regularly. The sweat-drenched sheets of the bed provided some cool comfort as I began to relax and let all the fear leak out like from a deflated balloon. Thankfully, it appeared to work. I felt the presence diminish and slowly disappear. Of course, after it went away and stopped to think, did that just really happen? Maybe my brother in the lower bunk was just messing with me. So I slowly went to the ladder and looked down, making sure the thing was playing a trick and simply hiding at the bottom. Still shaking slightly and drenched in fear-induced sweat, I quickly jumped to the ground and turned on the lights. Nothing there, thankfully. I walked over to my brother, taking careful steps to make sure I didn't wake him if he was asleep. I started to check to see if he was asleep, and he did appear to be asleep. Slow, controlled breathing, eye movement associated with REM, etc. At that point, I decided the best thing to do was sleep with the lights on for the rest of the night. That wasn't the last time I encountered the presence, though. I would encounter it later, to banish it from the house. To this day, I've yet to meet it again.
B8 or 9. Playing tag in the basement of a friend's house with his sister in the pitch black, so playing by sound. Friend yells for us to get to the couch now. No idea where I am. His sister starts crying and screaming for me to get to the couch. Follow their voices and arrive at the couch asking WTF? They tell me to look at the door leading outside. Giant-ass shadow figure about 9 feet tall. Can't describe how I can see a black shadow in the pitch black. It's holding a silver blade up beside its head, curving downwards about 3 feet. Like a scythe blade but no staff part. Walking slowly towards us, about 20 feet away. We're screaming for parents to turn on the lights. They're drunk upstairs. His sister screams, "Turn on the lights!" Shadow figure increases its pace to about jogging speed. Lights flicker on when it's about 6 feet away from us. We bolt upstairs and cry. I've always wondered what it was that I saw and what would have happened had the lights not come on. What does /X/ make of it? Only freaky thing to ever happen to me, and I don't really know much about the paranormal. I was probably about 5 feet away from it when my friends started yelling too. Another note is we had locked the door leading outside before turning off the lights to play, and it was unlocked when we took our parents down.
Don't try to mess with what you don't know. 20 years old, stayed late on intern work, an old industry shit business. Literally only me and the janitor. He passes me by without saying a thing. Try to say goodnight. He only looks back and replies the same, while adding, "Take care." I notice how he emphasizes that last phrase. Think nothing of it. Go to the back exit. The front is already locked. It's cold and dark. That ominous feeling of dread when a place so big is deserted. Let's go home. Suddenly I perceive something in the dark moving. There was this door thing. Starts opening. But it isn't a common door. It's a rift from the middle that gets bigger. Like 2 doors sliding away from each other. I get freaked out and fall back. It stops moving and goes back to being closed. I step further again. Same thing. Start to lose my mind. Hear some voice from behind me. It's just an automatic door. Don't try to look back. Like those on Toy Story. Start running. It's moving again. Don't care. The fear turns into adrenaline. Breaks something that seems glass. It keeps opening behind me. Never looked back. Next day they said someone smashed the back door and now we would have to use the emergency exit by the left. Apparently the janitor was being asked things, but only I know that the paranormal was behind that shit that night.
At my old holiday house, we hear a lot of creaking and bumps, etc. It's an old house, but a few times I have seen things moving on their own. The kitchen is directly above my bedroom. One night I heard a crash, went upstairs, and saw a plate broken on the floor. This was odd in itself as we keep them in a cupboard, whose door has one of those pseudo-magnets, so it closes by itself. The cupboard was open. As I went to pick it up and put it in the bin, I saw 2 more shifts a little bit and fell from the shelf. I got out of there immediately and didn't clean the mess up until the next morning. I have 2 indoor cats, so I have to keep all the windows and doors closed when I'm up at the house so that they don't get out, which means that wind doesn't blow through. I keep my bedroom door open with a wedge so they can come in if they want to. I was woken up by one of them meowing at me. Then a few minutes later, the door slowly closed, moving the wedge as well, making a very loud noise. The cat raised its hackles and bounded out of the room. As you can imagine, I didn't sleep. Other than that, there have been a few times where furniture has abruptly moved as if someone has bumped into it. It's like we have a very clumsy poltergeist.
When I was 15, I had one remaining activity to complete for my Bronze Duke of Edinburgh award, the expedition. Basically, this involved a 2-day hike in the wilderness, 1 day and 1 night. I was fortunate to be one of the younger members of our 9-person group. I kind of took a back seat in a lot of the decision-making, so it was pretty cruisy. All I had to do was keep up with the crowd, demonstrate my knowledge and training, and stick to the plan. Day 1. So off we set after being dropped off in the highlands of Bonnie, Scotland. I can't remember the exact distance we had to cover by evening, but we set a fairly brisk pace, and everyone seemed well up to the task. We had decided to make camp on government land, pretty much in the middle of nowhere. There was the occasional sign of previous habitation in the area, the odd raised and dilapidated foundations peeking out of the heather. At around 6 p.m., we entered what I can only describe as a long, upward-sloping shallow valley. It was around 300 meters wide and a few kilometers long. One side was about half the height of the other, and behind the shorter side was going to be the final resting place of the slowly setting spring sun. It's at this time that I notice a member of our group, Ben, looking a little uncertain and uncomfortable, straining his eyes, looking way off into the distance, seemingly transfixed on the top of the slope with the sun setting behind it. I couldn't make out what he was staring at. I asked him if everything was okay, and he quietly replied, "Uh-huh." At around 6:45, the sky was darkening and the sun was a few wits above the slope. We were in the process of setting up camp, tents, fire, etc., when we saw a figure approaching from down the other slope. The team leader got up to meet the person approaching the camp, and we all fell silent to listen in on what was being said. Turns out he was a local, a farmer I assume, out walking, and just wanted to have a friendly chat. There was a brief exchange of pleasantries, the usual, who we were, what we were doing, etc. The guy had lived in the area for most of his life. Before he left, he told the team leader that it was not a great idea staying in this particular area. Didn't elaborate on why exactly, and suggested that we go with him a few km away and stay at a local campsite. We advised that we couldn't do that, and we had to adhere to our plan in order to qualify for our award. It was at this time that I became quite concerned with Ben. Now I'm quite an empathic person. I can always read people's state and moods within a few moments of meeting them. I also pick up on any personality changes very easily. Ben had me quite worried because as soon as we'd entered this valley, he'd effectively shut up completely. He looked worried. This made me want to find out why, as it was unsettling me too. He was still blanking the group, back turned to the campfire, still staring up this slope. He looked like he was in a trance, fully memorized. It was getting much darker now, and I decided to sit next to him and try to see what he was transfixed on. I could sort of make out a tree-shaped object, not May branches, very dark and about 4 people tall. I tapped Ben on the shoulder and he snapped around to stare me in the eyes. He looked scared and absent. "What is it?" I asked him. "Can you see that?" he queried, pointing to the top of the slope. "What is that tree?" I suggested. He moved back to his original position and didn't say anything for a few moments. "I think it's getting closer," he said quietly. He was deadpan. Seriously, this made the hairs on my arms stand on end. What an odd thing to say. With a cocked eyebrow, I turned back around and resumed the campfire banter. At around 8 o'clock, the sun finally disappeared behind the hill and it became colder and almost completely dark. The moon was out. It was also a clear night. No clouds and no wind. Quite a nice Scottish night, actually. I once again checked on Ben, who was still sitting there staring up the slope. A couple of other team members had inquired as to why he was being antisocial, but they got the same weird statements. Something is moving. Something is getting closer. To be honest, at this stage in the evening, I couldn't see anything clearly up the slope anymore. Maybe a trace outline of an object. Being guys under 17 away from home, we decided that the 9:30 curfew was way too early. Everyone was having a great time, ironically, telling ghost stories which put us on edge, but as we were in a big group and sleeping in 3-man tents, no one was particularly freaked out, except Ben. I was periodically checking on him, the odd glance his way every half hour or so. A few times I sat next to him and asked him to just ignore what was bothering him. All he kept saying was, "It's getting closer." At around 10 p.m., I humored him and tried to make out what he was looking at. I got my mag light and shone it up the slope. I could barely make out the tree, and I don't know if the light was playing tricks on me, but it did look closer. I told Ben we would check it out in the morning. So finally, at around 10:50, myself and Ben were sitting around the dying campfire, and I pretty much ordered him to go to bed. He was totally freaked out. I considered it my responsibility now to make sure he got to sleep and he was safe. Ben was sleeping the furthest away from the door. Soon I was fast asleep. Suddenly I was jolted awake by a harrowing scream. The tent was freezing. The door to the tent was flapping in a calm breeze. Ben was lying across both myself and Darren's legs unconscious. I sat there in the darkness, slowly becoming aware that Ben had pissed himself and the side of my sleeping bag was warm and moist. Darren pushed Ben's legs over to his sleeping bag and tried to close the tent. I tried to wake up Ben. Initially, it was futile. It took me a good 5 minutes to get him to come around, and he was totally freaked out, more scared than I had ever seen anyone in my life. All he kept saying was that she tried to take me, and other permutations of some woman trying to lift him out of the tent. Whilst recounting, Darren was trying desperately to get the tent door zipped up, but to no avail. He ended up putting a safety pin in it. Suffice it to say, both Darren and I were speechless and terrified. So much so that we didn't leave the tent until first light, and somehow we all managed to drift off until then. Well, at around 6:30 a.m. I once again awoke. Ben was lying face down on top of his sleeping bag, shivering. Darren and I were both pretty groggy, but remembered everything freaking thing that had happened at 3 or 4 a.m. The team leader called out for everyone to get up and come and get breakfast on the go. It was then that I started to notice some bizarre, out-of-place things about the tent. 1. The top of the tent was singed, like if you were to get a spray can and use a lighter for about 2 seconds, just enough to melt but not burn. 2. The door's zipper had melted. No burn marks, just warped plastic. The fly sheet at the entrance of the tent was singed black. 3. As Ben stirred and looked at me, I noticed he had blisters on his forehead. He did not look good. So skip an hour or so. We had all eaten, and Ben finally decided to tell us what had happened to him after much encouragement from me. What he said freaked us out big time, but it didn't stop there. Basically, he'd been fixated on something up the slope that he felt was drawing him in. He couldn't take his eyes away from this thing. He'd become convinced that whatever he was staring at was moving, albeit very slowly, towards our camp. After finally getting to sleep, he was suddenly awoken by an intense heat. He said that he could see light behind his eyelids, on his face. Apparently, he was face to face with what he describes as a woman all in black, screaming at him, engulfed in flames. She was trying to get him to help her, begging for him to take her hand. He, of course, had a complete sensory overload and passed out. Everyone, bar us 3, was highly skeptical to say the least. It wasn't until he showed everyone the tent that doubts began to creep into the minds of the doubters. So with increasing haste, our camp was packed up, a record dismantling in my opinion. The fire was doused with water, and we were very keen to get out of the area ASAP. It was with some encouragement from Darren and I that the team leader hesitantly decided to come with 4 others to see what was on the top of that slope. Well, it was a fair trek, about 500 meters, but we eventually got there. I shit you not. I was gobsmacked by what we discovered, for standing solitary like a pillar of black was a tree that had been fashioned into a post. It was caked in soot and cinders, and at its base was a plaque. The plaque read something like this: "Here stands some Celtic name post, a place used to burn witches from X to Y. 103 witches were burned here." Sorry, I don't remember the exact words. Needless to say, we found ourselves at the bottom of that slope pretty damn quickly. To this day, I swear that this happened. It's the closest I've come to seeing a ghost.
A few small things. When I was a kid playing Nintendo in my room, I got hit in the back of the head by a stupid little McDonald's toy that was on the top of my brother's dresser in his room with the others. Figuring he threw it at me, I ran out to chase him, but found he was in the bathroom. He couldn't have made it there in time, and definitely not without making noise. Running, closing the door fast. Later, when in college I returned home for a holiday or something, arrived at an empty house, no one there. Go to the bathroom because I need to piss bad from the long trip. I'm really thirsty also, so grab a paper cup and take a few swigs. I crumple and throw the cup on the counter, then turn around to finish my business. Anyway, I turn back around and notice that the crumpled up paper cup is rocking back and forth. It dawns on me that this is odd as I threw it down almost a minute ago. Why is it still moving? And it seemed like as soon as I had that thought, the cup stopped moving rather abruptly for how fast it was rocking about. I thought WTF and tried picking it up and tossing it down again, but couldn't recreate the motion. It stopped within a few seconds each time. Checked for open windows and if the furnace was on. All were closed and the thermostat was set to off. Lost the TV remote in my college apartment. I looked all over for it, like 3 times, even flipping over the mattress and checking odd places like the closet and cupboards, etc. Anyway, like 3 days after losing it, I come back from classes and that bastard remote is right in the middle of the floor. Pretty common story, I guess.
About 2 years ago, I was at a friend's house with my girlfriend, his girlfriend, and his cousin, and it got late, so I walked my girlfriend home. I cut across a small field to cut the walk by a good 20 mins. After I dropped my girlfriend home, I set off back across the field, keeping in mind it was winter and it was pitch black 10 p.m. As I got to the opening to the field, I got a phone call from my friend's girlfriend, we'll call her G, saying her dad had gone missing, and to look out for him on the way home, I said, okay, put the phone down, and continued on like the cocky, brave fucker I was. As I got to the top of a little hill, about 5 minutes into my walk, I heard angry shouting. Not casual anger, though, mental shouting, the shit you hear in hospitals. He was shouting, "Where are you? I'll fucking kill you, you twats!" I noped it, and froze at the top of the hill, and phoned G and told her what I heard. She got her mum, sister's boyfriend and his cousin to come meet me to help the search, which I never agreed to. I was teamed up with G's big brother to scout the darker parts of the field. In the end, we were walking around for a good hour, shouting for G's dad every now and then, hearing a shout. Eventually, I got a phone call from G saying they found him and to gather back on the street. G's dad stood there totally fine, saying he went for a walk and didn't hear any shouting, not even us shouting for him. We walked off, turning round every now and then to check on Jay, G's dad. After about 4 times of turning round, he snapped and screamed at us, "What the fuck are you looking at?" And we all nope.jpg back home. I still don't know what happened that night, and I don't dare delve deeper into it as it terrifies me. Additional notes, this family has a history of ghostly experiences with G, often telling me about things she's seen.
B14. Have a nightmare. Feel a depression at the end of the mattress like someone sitting down. Slowly moving out of a nightmare. Feel a second depression near my stomach. Feel a third depression near my head. Very strong. Hear a voice yelling, "What are you doing?" GTFO as fast as possible. Explain the situation to a friend sleeping in the living room. Friend thought he felt presence in the room before, so willingly went back with me. All the sheets that were on the bed are torn off and on the floor. Shaken, we sat down on the bed and discussed. Out of nowhere, Xbox controllers in his cupboard start to vibrate non-stop. Friend pulls them out of the cupboard, turns them off. I say, "If that was you, do it again." Controllers come on again. Friend goes to stop them. They stop on their own. It was at said friend's house. Never went back in there alone.
Personal story, I guess. So I work overnights at a local supermarket. We close at 11 p.m. and most of the third shifters, including myself, leave work at 4 a.m. Some stay later. I felt like I shouldn't share this story, but it's been long enough that I don't think anything will come from it. This happened over a year ago. I've been working at this job for now close to 2.5 years. For the most part, it's a pretty normal job. You've got your shitty managers mixed with pretty cool coworkers. After a few months, I fitted pretty well and had a well-rounded group of work buddies that I even went out to bars with every now and then. I'm sure I'm not the only person that starts to notice patterns and habits with people they see on an almost daily basis, like where people like to spend their lunches at or who they generally sit with. One thing I started to notice was what cars people drove and where they liked to park. Not everyone had a spot, Most people just took the closest spot, like myself. But there were those couple of cars I noticed that were generally in the same spot or close to it. After a couple of months, I could almost tell you who drove what car. I didn't always get a chance to see the people getting into or out of their cars like people who worked earlier or later than I. There was one car that stood out to me, though. It was an older Chevy Suburban, maybe 2000 or 2003. It was a darker red color and was sort of beat up. It wasn't a junker or anything, just didn't look very well taken care of. The reason this SUV started to stand out to me was because of how far out it would be parked when I was leaving around 4 a.m. It seemed like it was always the farthest parked car in the lot. When you work the graveyard shift, things like this tend to keep your mind busy. You don't have to use a whole lot of brain power to stock things. So I started to make mental notes after a few days of noticing how far out the SUV was parked every night. It didn't really make sense. People always fought for the closest spot. This SUV was always the farthest away. I would glance around on my way in around 10:50 p.m. every night to see if I could spot the SUV. I could never find it on my way in. I didn't really try very hard to find it, though. Then on my way out around 4:05 a.m., I would look for it again. I could always find it on my way out every single night I worked without fail. After about 2 weeks of this, I came up with the theory that whoever drove the SUV was just the type of person who clocked in during the 5-minute grace period people were given before they were considered late for their shift. It would also explain why they were always parked so far out. All the good spots would already be taken. I started taking note of who showed up last to clock in at night, and there just wasn't enough consistency to pick out who drove this SUV. Because I never worked past 4 a.m., I never would get to see who would get in, since they always seemed to work past 4. One night I even sat in my car for an extra few minutes to see if anyone came out to the SUV. I didn't stay long, though, and didn't want to seem like a creeper. After a solid 2 months of this, it started to really annoy me one night, for whatever reason. I wasn't obsessing over it. It was something that, like I said earlier, keeps my brain working during the boring hours of work. But that night, it just really got me. Finally, I asked a coworker about it. He said he had no idea what I was talking about. Fine. I asked someone else about it. Same response. Extra annoyed, I mentioned it at break to the group of guys I hung out with. During break, we would sit in the dining area next to the cafe. It was at the front of the store and had those long glass window walls, or whatever they're called.
Dunno if it was a ghost, or a combination of items that created a figure of a ghost. B10, at the beach house on summer vacation, trying to sleep. Around 10:30 to 11 p.m. Not able to sleep. Keep opening eyes after I give up on sleeping. Opened eyes after giving up. Old lady ghost thing sitting about 8 to 10 feet away. Scared as shit. Close eyes, count to 5. Open them. Ghost still there. Run out of the room. Sleep outside, on the terrace. She seemed pretty detailed. A really old lady with lots of jewelry on. Dressed in rags, with gray hair. I've come to the conclusion that it might have just been a combination of surrounding items, which created the figure, or a hallucination in general. But who knows?
Tonight I'll share with you a true and kinda funny, creepy paranormal event that happened. About 6 years ago, I had a friend named Alex. She lived with her mom in a shitty 2-story house in an old folks' neighborhood. We'd get together and often hang out until the wee hours, just playing video games, watching weird movies, and hanging around the neighborhood. One night we hung out until like 5 a.m. I was way too tired to drive home safely, so I crashed on her couch in the living room. We were bros, and she was as lesbian as 10 Rosie O'Donnells at Lilith Fair. Around 5 a.m. I'm awoken to this roaring voice of a man screaming "asshole" from the kitchen. I bolt upright, grab a heavy candlestick off the table and pussyfoot my way into the kitchen, try to get all hard and say something like, "You want some of this, fuckface?" and flick the light on. Nothing. My heart is running at a peeling pace. I bolt up to the second story and knock on Alex's door. Tell her I think some crackhead is in the house. She goes, "Oh, that's the Tourette's Ghost." I'm like, "What the fuck are you on?" But she was serious. By this point, her mom was up too, and they both explained how since they moved in, they've dealt with hearing this booming man's voice shout random cuss words in the middle of the night from various parts of the house. They'd called the police a shit ton of times when they first moved in, thinking there was a crackhead living under the house and sneaking in, or a fight outside. All it does is swear, maybe once or twice a month. All their neighbors are elderly couples, no rednecks, thugs, or gang shit in the neighborhood. I stayed over a few more times over the years and heard it on a couple other occasions. Always just one word, always swearing. So there it is, the Tourette's Ghost. Kind of a crappy story, but kind of a crappy ghost.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more Greentext will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.